Today on Libertas video, we start our three-part series on how to create a modern assassin gauntlet. Welcome to Libertas Video, the channel dedicated to encouraging, entertaining, and inspiring you through costume and prop, builds, and reviews. Now, everything that we're going to be using in this video will be linked in the description below. Some of those will be affiliate links, so if you use them, they'll help us out at no additional cost to you. Now, recently we've been doing a lot of prop reviews, but one of the things that we're really passionate about here is doing prop and costume builds as well, so that you don't have to be reliant on what you can only buy online. You can make this stuff as well, so we want to share with you what we've been learning over the past few years. Now, one of our most popular videos to date has been our modern assassin vambrace that we created for Assassin's Creed fan film. Now, back when we created that vambrace, we were really limited by my time and by the knowledge that I had to create these props, so I never was able to really get it to what I initially intended it to be. But now that we've been learning a lot over these past few years, it seems like a good time to reinvestigate how to create this modern gauntlet. To start off this three-part series, we are going to begin by creating a template based off my arm. You can follow along with that to create a template for your arm as well that will be customized to your specific size and dimensions. Then we're going to transfer that template over to a 2mm foam and then encase it in Worbla to create the armor pieces for this gauntlet. So to start off this project, we are going to be making a duct tape template. Now, I had previously done this, so that's why there's no video footage. However, it essentially entails creating a cast off of your arm. Now, you can do that by encasing your arm in tinfoil and then wrapping it with duct tape. Just keep it nice and conformed to the arm. This will give you the best result for your particular arm. Once that duct tape is on there, you can draw out with a Sharpie marker on your arm the design that you're going for. So once the design is drawn on the duct tape template, you can cut it off. Now, just be very careful. You're going to be having a blade next to your bare skin, so just take your time and go slowly and trim that off your arm. Then you can lay it flat. And I laid it flat on my cutting mat, which has inch marks on it so I can keep the scale. And then using my phone, I just took a top-down picture trying to keep it as level to the table as possible so that I could get this accurate photo. I then took that into the computer and took it into Adobe Illustrator. I then scaled it to the life size and made a quick line art template around there. I was able to print that off and test it on my arm, recognizing that my arm being bare for like a gauntlet that would go onto my bare skin versus a gauntlet that would go onto a sleeve, I was going to need it a little bit bigger, so that's why I sized up the template just a little bit in the width, not necessarily the height. And that's where this template for this video starts. As you can tell from this template, it was originally designed to be a singular piece of leather. I was making that Aguilar gauntlet. However, for this, since we're going to be encasing it in Worbla and it's very rigid, we're not going to have that mobility to kind of untie this gauntlet. So I'm splitting it into two pieces. All right, I'm going to be transferring this template onto 2mm foam. We are going to make some slight adjustments. However, my tip for you is if you're using black foam, use a silver or gold Sharpie marker to draw out your template. It'll make it very easy to see. Now here I'm using another template. It's just printed out again, and I'm using that for my dividing line. And there we go, we have two pieces. I'm also drawing in bridging pieces here as well. Now, we're going to be attaching that with different fabric, but I'm going to keep those as a reference. We're going to eventually cut those off, but it'll come in handy again in the next video. So to cut out this template, you can use scissors if you want. I'm just using this box cutter, large X-Acto knife. You just want to make sure you keep that knife sharp and you go slow. There's no rush on this, and it will just turn out into a better foam piece. Then just testing it on the arm one last time to make sure everything's looking good. Once again, I'm just noting that I'm cutting this into two separate pieces. However, if you were just going to be making a foam gauntlet, you could probably just leave these as one. The next part I'm going to do is mark where the hidden blade will go. Since this is a hidden blade gauntlet, I'm going to really take my time to make sure that this hidden blade
lines up properly. Sometimes it can go on a slight angle. So what I'm doing is testing the foam gauntlet on my arm, putting it down on top of the hidden blade, and then using that as a reference. I can then use a pen to draw in where these hidden blade straps would go and mark them on the base, what I'm going to be calling the mounting plate. Here I'm using the Altair Spirit Halloween hidden blade. I've done a review on this in the past. You can check it out in the link above or in the description to learn a little bit more about it. While I found it to be a little disappointing as a replica for Altair's hidden blade, it is generic enough to fit any assassin, so I chose it for this particular project because we can paint it up and make it look modern without too much modification. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm trimming out those holes that I marked with an X-Acto blade. I'm making the holes a little bit larger here on the foam simply because when the Worbla encases it, it's gonna overlap just a little bit, so I wanna make sure those holes stay big enough that these Velcro straps can make it through. The next part was just to make a handguard. Now I didn't originally make a template for this since I knew it was gonna be kind of based on this particular project, so what I essentially did, well, what I did is I spent way too much time trying to accurately measure out everything. All you really need to do is, cut out a rectangle, test fit it on your hand, and adjust based on the contours of your hand. My suggestion would be measure out how wide your hand is at the widest point, so up by the knuckles, and then measure how long you want that top plate to be, and then you can just test fit it on your hand and see where it tapers down. Just follow those curvature of your hand and you'll be good to go. The other thing is just quickly round off those edges. Really simple. You can make like 3 straight cuts to make that rounded circle, or you can just go freehand, whichever one you want. So the next part is getting the Worbla out. Now you can cut the Worbla with scissors if you want, like you can with foam. I'm just using my knife again. You just want to make sure that when you put your template down, you have a good border around it with the Worbla. This will help it lay on top and overlap quite a bit, just so you can get that nice good sandwich effect. Now, of course, it is a little difficult to do simply because the way that the Worbla ships in kind of this tube fashion, it rolls up on you. You can use a heavy book and that holds it down very easily. It's fairly thin material, so makes the cutting a lot easier. One of the things we want to keep in mind is that we'll be putting the glossy side of the Worbla to the glossy side of the Worbla. So we kind of be putting those two pieces together. That's why I'm flipping over the template when I cut out the larger piece of Worbla. And then we move on to sandwiching the Worbla. You want to be really careful here because you're going to be heating up things with a heat gun, and it's possible that you can heat it up too much and burn yourself. So you just want to be really careful. Wear gloves if you need to. If you're a seasoned vet on this, maybe you'll know kind of the heating consistency, but until you're comfortable with where the Worbla is and how much time it takes to heat up and get malleable, just take your time, be cautious until you get comfortable using it. Essentially what we're going to do is heat up both sides until they become pliable. A tip that I personally use is putting tinfoil down on my cutting mat. If you look closely, you'll see my cutting mat is warped because I had heated Worbla on there before and it had deformed my cutting mat. So using the tinfoil helps reflect some of that heat back up. I can't say it's going to be a foolproof option, but it seems to be working out for me fairly well as I've moved forward. Also, when this Worbla heats up, it tends to stick to other things as well. It's a lot easier to pull off the tinfoil than it would be off of a rubber cutting mat. Once you're done heating up that Worbla, you can place the foam onto one side and then sandwich it with the other piece of Worbla. What you're going to want to do is slowly roll out the Worbla. You can use your fingers, but I personally like to use my leather stylus. I kind of pinch down the sides with the scoop end or roll out things kind of like a rolling pin. So that's my recommendation. I really think it works well, but you can use whatever is at your disposal. My tip would be work in segments, but leave one edge open for air to escape. I did not do that and I paid the price on this first piece. Also, it's best if you leave the layer that's going to be facing outwards. So say the top portion of the gauntlet, the part that you're going to be seeing, not the interior piece that's going to be touching your skin, but the outside piece, that's the part that's laying flat on the table, or I should say the one that's touching the tin foil. And then the portion that you're kind of continuously heating and sandwiching down from the top, That's going to be the interior piece. What's going to happen is you're going to get air bubbles. That part's going to be a little bit more, well, not going to look as good, but the part that's touching the tin foil is going to stay nice and flat. It's not going to get those air bubbles in it, so it's going to give you a nice, smooth, finished result. So keeping that portion on the table is going to work out best for you going forward. Now, if and when you do get air bubbles, it's always nice to get those back out. What you can do is just reheat up the Worbla. You'll know by now that we're kind of heating up the Worbla back and forth as we go to continuously adhere it to itself. But you're going to heat it up again and pierce a hole into one of the bigger air pockets. That way, when you heat up the Worbla, you can use your stylus as a rolling pin, kind of roll, or use your fingers to roll that air back out towards one of those bigger pockets and help escape that gas or air. What you can do then is heat up the Worbla one more time and re-adhere it to itself to close up that hole, kind of smooth everything out. So that's a big recommendation. I'm not the best at it. There are better tutorials online out there, but we won't dive into it much further than that. Just know it takes some practice. I'm not the best at it, but you can be. So when you're happy with the sandwiching, you can reheat the Worbla again to trim off the excess pieces of Worbla. You're going to want to leave a little bit of an edge to keep that seal nice and airtight, but the heat will help with the trimming. The other thing I want to remind you of is with the mounting plate, you want to make sure that you pierce the holes where the hidden blade's going to be attached. So we're going to push those Velcro straps through if you're following along with the one that I'm doing. What I personally did to make sure that that outer facing portion still looked nice and smooth was I pushed from that nice side so that like it curves under and into where it's going to be attaching closer to my skin. When you're happy with the trimming, then you can reheat this portion all over front and back, and then you can form it around your arm. Be really careful here though, you don't want to burn yourself if the Worbla gets too hot. If you need to, definitely wear a sleeve. However, I was able to wait long enough for it to cool down just enough that I could place it on my arm to get that really nice form-fitting design. I just held my Worbla in place until I was fairly confident that it wasn't going to move anymore, that it was fairly firm. So just take your time, take this slow, and if you need to shape anything again, just go ahead and reapply a little bit more heat to that specific section and everything should be pretty good. Then you just repeat this process on all the pieces. But do note for the top plate, when the Worbla was at that part where I could form it on my arm, I did continuously move my wrist around, back and forth, and I even had to reheat it a few times just to continue this process. But just to make sure that my wrist has full ample movement. It gave it this nice little edge bevel onto the Worbla, which could be really cool for like a steel plating effect, but I think it's going to work out really well here and allow my wrist to continue to move without obstruction. So you can do the same if you want.
And that's going to be a good spot to end this particular video. In the next video, we'll be taking this Worbla armor and fully fleshing out the visual style of it. So if you're not already subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscription and notification bell to make sure that you stay up to date with everything that we're doing to create this modern gauntlet. As a reminder, everything that we have used in this video will be linked in the description below, and you can always connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Libertas Video. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up so other people can find it as well. But that's going to do it for us here. We'll see you on the next Libertas video.